date and time set for review and permanency planning in these matters. Both parents, well, I should say Ms. Bradley is here, the mother of both children. Mr. Haas is here. He's the father of Abra, a non-respondent. Mr. Polk is not here. And Mr. Salasina is here on behalf of the department. Mr. Schropp is here on behalf of Mr. Polk. Mr. Rosenthal is here on behalf of Ms. Bradley, and Ms. Barco is here on behalf of the children. Well, the matter's being done via Zoom and YouTube Live and in person. Any objection to that, Council?
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Salasina, then, how do you want to begin today?
If I could, Your Honor, I'd like to begin with some testimony from Ms. Stephanie Smoose. Okay. Where is Abra currently residing?
With her mother and father.
Okay. And who are they?
Elizabeth Bradley and Eric Haas.
Okay. Are there any concerns about Abra's current placement there?
Yes.
What are those concerns?
The concerns are housing stability and domestic concerns between Ms. Bradley and Mr. Haas.
Okay. Why is housing a concern?
At an FTM, which is a family team meeting that took place on April 24th, it was brought up that Mr. Haas stated that they were facing getting evicted from their home of approximately being $4,000 in rent behind, and that they were going to court the next day on this, and that he had gotten a shut-off notice for, I believe it was gas.
Okay. Why is domestic relations also a concern?
During the past reporting period, law enforcement has been called to the house 3 times, and 2 of those times were a result of a domestic dispute.
Okay. Have there been any physical or mental health concerns for Abra during the past reporting period?
Not at this time.
Have there been any educational concerns for Abra during the past reporting period?
Not at this time.
Okay. Switching gears to Maverick, where has he been placed for the past reporting period?
He's in a foster home.
Is that a relative foster home or unrelated caregiver?
Unrelated caregiver.
Okay. Are there any concerns about Maverick's current placement in that foster home?
Not at this time.
Have there been any physical or mental health concerns for Maverick during the past reporting period?
Not at this time.
Have there been any educational concerns for Maverick during the past reporting period?
No.
Is Maverick receiving any sort of extracurricular enrichment activities that would meet the reasonable parenting standard?
Yes.
What are those?
His foster parents take him on golf cart rides, they go on walks, they go to the soccer field and play soccer. He goes to soccer games of his foster siblings, they go out to eat, attend parties, go out for ice cream, etc.
Have the children received sibling visits during the past reporting period?
Yes, they have.
What do those look like?
I have not received any reports of signaling it. I believe I received a few from Miss Bradley's mother, and they just said all went well.
Okay. How frequently are those sibling visits occurring?
They were occurring multiple times a week, about 4 times a week.
During this past reporting period, have you had any contact with Brian Kolk?
I have not.
What attempts have you made to locate Brian Kolk?
I believe it was on April 18th. I went out to the home of his last reported address, and nobody answered the door.
Okay. To your knowledge, has Mr. Kolk had any contact with Mav during the past reporting period?
Not to my knowledge.
To your knowledge, is Mr. Kolk engaged in any sort of services offered by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services or a designee of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Have you had any face-to-face contact with Ms. Bradley during this past reporting period?
Yes, I have.
How frequently has that occurred?
Not very frequently. It occurred a few times during this reporting period for an FTM, again, family team meeting, and a few drug screens.
Okay. Are you having any other contact with Ms. Bradley other than face-to-face contact?
There have been some text messages back and forth.
Okay. At this point in time, what is the current permanency planning goal for Maverick?
Reunification, however, we are going to ask for a goal change.
Okay. Why do you feel that why do you believe that the current permanency planning goal of reunification is no longer appropriate?
Maverick has been in care for a very long period of time, and the barriers for when he entered care are not resolved.
Okay. What do you assess are the barriers to reunifying Maverick with his parents?
Substance abuse is an ongoing issue for Miss Bradley. And then I would like to note that during an FTM on April 24th, Miss Bradley had stated that she no longer wanted to be drug screened at her home, as she wanted it to be a safe place. And she continues to test positive, although I believe 4 of these screens were through a different, were through Accurate Screen and not from the department.
Okay. When you say she continues to test positive, what is she testing positive for?
On 2/14/2023, Ms. Bradley tested positive for amphetamines and THC, and then on 2/15/2023, Ms. Bradley tested positive for amphetamine, methamphetamine, and THC, and the other tests were just positive for THC.
Okay.
3 tests on 3/6/2023, 3/9/2023, and 3/16/2023. The Accurate Screen had reached out for Ms. Bradley for a random screen, which she did not respond to.
Okay. Is the department offering Miss Bradley any services to help her with her perceived substance abuse issue?
The department has offered random drug screening, and I know Ms. Bradley was in counseling. It is unknown if she is still in counseling.
What have you done to try to ascertain whether Miss Bradley is in counseling?
The department had called community mental health and had asked about Ms. Bradley. However, Ms. Bradley's counselor had stated that Ms. Bradley's release through them was expired and she could not give me any information.
Okay. Are there other barriers to reunifying Maverick with Miss Bradley other than the issue of substance use?
Yes, the housing issue that I had mentioned earlier, mental health, transportation. Miss Bradley does have transportation, however, she often needs gas cards. Employment, Miss Bradley did report during that family team meeting that she was hardly working and has not provided any verification of employment. Not following safety plans during parenting time, domestic disputes, and engagement of services.
Okay. Your knowledge, how frequently is Miss Bradley asking for gas cards?
I do not have that information right in front of me. That is something I would have to look. I would have to look that up.
How often, or strike that, do you know where Miss Bradley is currently employed?
I do not.
Okay.
Last what was reported, she was working for a cleaning company.
Have you been able to verify her employment?
I have not.
What attempts have you made to verify her employment?
Miss Bradley and I had discussed her sending me her pay stubs. However, she reported that she did not get pay stubs. And then during the family team meeting, she had mentioned hardly working and that she was going to look for a new job.
Okay. To your knowledge, has Miss Bradley found a new job?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. What are your concerns with Miss Bradley's parenting time?
Miss Bradley was participating in parenting time throughout the reporting period. These visits were to be supervised by Mr. Haas or Miss Bradley's mother, Stacy Butler. But there was a concern that the visits were not being supervised. And then on 5/13/2023, we had sent CPS out to complete a well-being check of Maverick and found that these were not, she was not being supervised.
What you'd mentioned that there were a number of domestic disputes involving Miss Bradley. Could you be more specific?
Yes. The concern is regarding domestic disputes involving Miss Bradley while the children are present. Law enforcement has been called to Miss Bradley 3 times. On 4/15/2023, Central Dispatch received a complaint regarding Miss Bradley's home. The call of service command states that at 23:25:10, the caller said that they could hear the neighbors screaming at one another. They reported hearing "you crazy bitch," slamming doors, and yelling. However, Miss Bradley had left by the time the deputy got there. And then 5/13/2023 is when an incident happened when CPS, Miss Astro, went to check on Maverick. And then the other dispute was on 5/14/2023. And on that incident, Mr. Haas had called law enforcement and advised that Miss Bradley had assaulted him and had thrown things at him and then left the home with their daughter, Abra.
Okay. What is the department doing to address these alleged domestic disputes with Miss Bradley?
The department has talked with Eric and safety planned around the domestic disputes.
Okay. What's the safety plan that you've come up with?
The safety plan, I would have to pull up to see exactly what we all planned on. Mr. Haas and a MIC worker and I had made a safety plan regarding the domestic disputes. I believe it was something along the lines of Mr. Haas would leave the house with Abra and call law enforcement if needed.
Okay. Further, earlier in your testimony, you mentioned there were issues with Miss Bradley engaging in services. Why do you believe that this is a barrier to reunification with Maverick?
During the reporting periods, there's ongoing concern that Miss Bradley continues to focus on previous investigations and the removal of Maverick during 2021. And during the majority of interactions with the department, instead of focusing on her services and needs. Again, Miss Bradley participated in a family team meeting on 4/24 and did not sign her parent agency treatment plan and ended the meeting early. Miss Bradley's communication with the department has been hostile and accusatory for some of the interactions, and she has not responded to attempts to schedule parenting time supervised by the department.
During the past reporting period, switching gears to Mr. Colt, have the previously identified barriers to reunification for Mr. Colt continue to exist?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, Mr. Colt's done nothing to alleviate those barriers?
That is correct.
And what are the barriers that you currently identify, barriers to reunification that you currently identify for Mr. Colt?
The barriers would be substance abuse, housing, and engagement of services.
Okay. You mentioned earlier in your testimony that you thought a change of permanency planning goal for Maverick would be appropriate. What do you believe would be an appropriate change in permanency planning goal for Maverick?
Adoption.
Why do you believe that that's an appropriate permanency planning goal?
Maverick has been in care for over 15 months, I believe, and the barriers that led to his removal have not been, they have not been, they're still being worked on. They haven't changed at all.
Okay. What have you done to investigate alternative permanency planning goals other than adoption?
Supervised with the department.
What do you mean by that?
We had some review hearings. We spoke with my supervisor about the case and believed that adoption would be the most appropriate goal.
Have you looked into relatives or fictive kin who may be able to provide permanency through, say, guardianship or another other permanency planning goal?
Miss Bradley's mother, Stacy, had reached out to my supervisor and I and had stated that she would like to take guardianship of Maverick. However, when she was provided the steps that she would need to take, she never responded.
Okay. Have you looked into other family members or household members as prospective guardians?
In the past reporting periods, Mr. Haas was asked about guardianship. I believe this was before I took over the case, and he had stated that he was not ready to do that.
Okay. Switching gears back to Abra, progress has been made toward reunifying Abra with Ms. Bradley.
Miss Bradley has taken drug screens. She does have housing and transportation, although there are concerns with her housing. She was participating in mental health services. However, it is unknown if she's still participating in those services. She was employed again. However, it is unknown if she is employed at this time.
At this point, Mr. Haas is not listed as a respondent, correct?
That is correct.
How do you believe the case with respect to Abra could be resolved?
If Abra was remain placed with her father, Mr. Haas, and Mr. Haas filed for full legal and physical custody of Abra through front of the court.
Okay. Would that include Ms. Bradley remaining in the home?
No, we would ask for Ms. Bradley to be removed from the home due to the concerns.
And what are those concerns?
It was previously
Objection asked and you're asked and answered. I mean, I feel like we're going in circles. I don't know. I know this isn't a criminal proceeding, but I mean, I believe we talked about the detriments and what's been happening with Miss Bradley and what the issues are. And now we're just kind of poking at it. Asked and answered.
I'll withdraw the question.
Okay, sustained.
Have you personally observed parenting times in the home?
I have not.
Okay. And have you had personal conversations with Mr. Haas?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Have you talked with Mr. Haas regarding his relationship status with Miss Bradley?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And how has Mr. Haas described the relationship?
He had reported that him and Miss Bradley were not in a supportive relationship and just living together.
Okay. When did you have this conversation with Mr. Haas?
Give me one moment. I can look up the date. That was on March 16th.
Of what year?
This year, 2023. I'm sorry, May 16th, 2023.
Okay. So that was within the past 2 weeks.
Yes.
I have no further questions for Ms. Smooth.
Mr. Rosenthal, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. So Ms. Smooth, how long have you been on this case for?
I believe I took over the case in February. I do not have the exact date. That I would have to look that up.
February. Well, roughly end or beginning?
I believe it was the beginning or middle.
Beginning. And how many times have you been to the home to conduct, investigations? You, not other individuals from CPS.
I'm sorry, can you ask that question again?
How many times have you been to Miss Bradley's residence and conducted, investigations? You personally?
I am a foster care worker, so I do go to the house once a month to verify the well-being of the children.
Okay, so once a month. And did that start in February or March?
I believe that started in March. I believe the initial visit was done in February. No,
And
I'm sorry, it did start in February. I had met with Ms. Bradley that month.
Okay. And from the domestic disputes that involved, did you guys get any police records, anything from the police department, any tickets, citations, anything issued, or were these just disputes that happened to be, called in
Yes.
and then they figured out to resolve it and they left?
I have the call for service reports and the 911 call.
Mm-hmm. And have you ever, in terms of abuse or anything with the children, have you ever seen any pictures of marks, bruises, bumps, anything? I mean, anything to your knowledge about any abuse, physical abuse with the children?
I have received pictures of Maverick, but it is not clear if they were just from playing.
And it could have been when he's with somewhere else. He's only with Miss Bradley. What you say 4, I had 6, but for about 9 hours. So it could have been not at Miss Bradley's or somewhere else, correct? At the foster care?
Yes, that is correct. I apologize. I'm at 4 days. 4 days. I did not mean to say 4 hours if that's what I indicated.
4 days. And so she has Maverick on those 4 days, about nine hours, you would say, and then she drops off.
That is correct, yes.
And then I know there's an issue about the home. As of now, it seems like utilities are paid. Lights aren't turning off at the moment, correct?
Correct. Mr. Haas stated that he paid everything.
And when Elizabeth was employed, has CPS ever gone to her occupation to question her at employment?
I am unaware of that. I don't believe so.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Schropp, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Barco, any questions?
Have you asked Ms. Bradley to participate in any drug screens since May 2nd, 2023?
I have not.
Okay, and why is that?
It has been difficult to randomly screen Miss Bradley due to her not wanting to be screened in her home. To be in the office to screen her has been difficult.
Okay, but you haven't requested one in the last month?
I have not been able to be in the office to screen her when I have availability to do so.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. For my next witness, I'd like to call Ashley Ashford. And how are you involved in the case presently before the court?
I was the respondent CPS on-call worker for the weekend of May 13th and the 14th of 2023.
All right. What happened on those dates?
On or about May 13th, 2023, I received requests to go and attempt to see Miss Bradley at her home regarding Maverick and whether visitation policy was being followed. I arrived at the home and knocked on the door. It took Miss Bradley a little bit to answer. She answered the door, was very accusatory as to why I was there. I explained to myself, just stating we wanted to check in on her and Maverick. She reported that everything was fine. I asked who was supervising. She reported that her mother, Miss Stacy Butler, was supervising at the moment. I asked if I could speak with her. She then said, oh, she just stepped into the bathroom. I reported to Miss Bradley that I would gladly wait. I would need to see her before I could leave the home. Elizabeth then said, wait a minute, shut the door, and proceeded into the home. After a couple minutes, I had not heard anything, so I had turned around and I noticed that an unidentified woman was walking through the back of the yard, and she appeared to be trying to approach the back door of the home. When she noticed that I was looking at her, she kind of dived back a little bit behind a shed area so I couldn't see her. I continued to try and make contact just to see kind of what was going on. And after a few moments, she came from around the shed and identified herself as Elizabeth's mom. Elizabeth then came to the door when Miss Butler was walking into the house and stated, Miss Butler stated that she had to run to go see about a sippy cup. The story was kind of unclear. And I had asked, why did you tell me your mom was in the bathroom? She immediately became defensive, started yelling, stated she wanted to know, if I had a paper of why I was there. I informed her that we could call Supervisor Ford together. At that time, I did call Supervisor Ford, and we kind of just had that conversation that, she was not being supervised. Why was this occurring? Miss Bradley and Miss Butler continued to escalate, stating F you, slamming the door multiple times, making very derogatory comments while the children were in their care. So after a little bit, I had decided to back away and go out to the car just to speak to Miss Ford about what our game plan was going to be because of the hostility and finding Maverick to be unattended with Miss Bradley at the time. Miss Bradley came out to the car, began yelling again, stating it's private property. This worker had to move. So this worker did move. I did end up moving to the overflow parking. And I did have concerns that Elizabeth and her mother were going to try and leave with the kids. So I walked outside in front of the house and I spoke with Supervisor Ford, and we agreed that parenting time would be discontinued for that day. I did decide to call dispatch just for assistance because of the hostility and, the remarks that I was receiving. And during that time, they did try and leave with the kids, put them in a wagon, try to leave. A lot more comments were said. Miss Bradley had told me to take Maverick. So I went to go get Maverick, and Maverick was visibly upset. I grabbed him, put him in my arms. Miss Bradley came back from inside and she had taken Maverick physically out of my arms and continued to yell at myself. I backed away, and that is when State Trooper and Newaygo Police Department had responded to the case, and they kind of cooled the situation down until I was able to get the car seat for Maverick to return him to his foster home.
Okay. Where was Abra present at that time?
Yes, Abra was present.
What happened to Abra?
She was left in the home. Miss Butler was, to my knowledge, still in the home with Elizabeth upon leaving. And then I believe that Supervisor Ford had spoke to Mr. Haas to inform him of what was going on, and he addressed that immediately.
Okay. How did Mr. Haas address that, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, it was that he found a sitter. I'm not sure if he went home. Miss Supervisor Miss Ford could speak to that better. She is the one who had the contact with Mr. Haas, because I was transporting Maverick back to his foster home.
Okay. And when you say Supervisor Ford, is that Miss Erica Ford?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned that you had contact with the home on the 13th. Did all the stuff that you just described happen on or about May 13th of 2023?
Yes, sir.
Did you have additional contact with the home?
I had additional contact with Central Dispatch. I received a call from Central Dispatch informing me that a domestic assault had occurred at the home that I was at the day prior. They informed me that Miss Bradley had physically assaulted Mr. Hawes and that she was fleeing the home on foot with Abra, and they were not sure where she would be going, so they had CPS on standby.
Okay. How did you respond to receiving that phone call?
I immediately let Supervisor Ford know what was going on and kept my phone on in case I had to respond. They had told me at the time that I didn't need to go out there yet. They wanted the police to address it first.
Section compound. This is just going long. I mean, it's not even separating questions. It's like a whole story. Can we just get direct questions? Can we get direct answers?
I guess I have no further questions for this witness.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Rosenthal, did you have questions for Ms. Aethorpe?
Yes, Your Honor. So Ms. Athrope, on 0513, what was the time that you came to the residence of Ms. Butler?
I do not have the exact time. I lied. 1:10 p.m. is when I showed up to the address of Miss Bradley. I did attempt a home visit at Miss Butler's prior to that visit.
Thank you. And so when Miss Butler appeared, I mean, she didn't drive up to the premises. Her car was there. She was in close proximity, if you will. Just because Elizabeth didn't see her doesn't mean she wasn't there, correct?
Correct, although there was no vehicle in the residency.
No. Okay. And how far in proximity does Miss Butler live from Miss Bradley?
Kitty corner, I guess you could say.
And when the situation was getting escalated, what did you do in your training to de-escalate the situation? You have training in that, correct?
Correct.
And so what did you do? What was your approach to de-escalate the situation?
I attempted to kind of speak with Miss Bradley and Miss Butler and just ask, what was going on, what occurred. I asked if, Miss Butler was going to be supervising, how we would approach that. I honestly did not get to speak a lot because I was often cut off by the yelling.
And were you argumentative during this time?
No, sir.
No? And did you ever try to, I guess, if you will, grab one of the babies from Miss Bradley?
No, sir.
And then when you followed up on the 13th, so when the police come, what happened when the police came to the premises?
When the police
residence?
The Newaygo officer had walked away with Miss Bradley and Maverick and allowed them to, they went into the shed to get some toys. And then Miss Butler continued to sit on the steps with Abra. And then I just stepped more towards the street with a state trooper.
Was May 13th, was that a nice day? Would that be a day you'd want to be outside?
Yes.
The kids, it was a nice day. And so after the officer came, did that help de-escalate the situation? Was there any tickets issued?
I do not believe so.
Okay. And have you guys ever told directly to Mr. Haas to call the police department or CPS if anything happens?
I cannot speak to that, sir. I'm not an assigned worker on the case. I was just responsive via on.
Thank you. And then how many times have you actually responded to Miss Butler and Miss Bradley's residence in the past?
It was just this one time.
Sometime. And did you get any follow-up calls after the 14th when Miss Bradley did give the child over to Mr. Haas? Did the police department ever call, need your guys' support with anything?
They followed up and said that they had taken care of it and that CPS was not needed. Dispatch called me back afterwards.
Thank you. That's all I have for now, Your Honor.
Barco, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Shaw?
No question.
All right, Mr. Salestein, any other evidence?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to call Ms. Erica Ford.
I am the foster care supervisor assigned to the case, and I was also the on-call supervisor the weekend of May 13 and May 14th.
Okay, I want to focus in specifically on those dates in May here. How did you become involved with the family on or about May 13th of 2023?
Yes, I was the on-call supervisor. So when things began to escalate, when Miss Aslorp went out for her well-being check, she had me present via phone just to attempt to assist explaining the situation to the family. And my recollection of the events occurred is very consistent with Miss Athorpe's events. So I won't get into detail unless you have further questions on that. But following Maverick's return to his foster family, or when he was in the safety of the care of Miss Aslorp, I contacted Mr. Haas. He was at work to fill him in on the situation, and we had a conversation regarding Miss Bradley and the situation. During that phone call, he indicated that he was surprised that the children were unsupervised, that Miss Butler was supposed to be supervising, and he was very upset about the situation. He indicated that he's the only one contributing any financial support, that Miss Bradley is often gone all night. It's like taking care of a child. They are not in a relationship. He believes she's actively using substances, and he does not want her in the home anymore. He was very adamant that they were not together. He did not want her.
This is from the hearsay. I mean, when this is coming to it, I mean, Eric hasn't testified. This is just speculation in my sense. There's nothing documented to state this. There's no recording. I don't even know if there's any video of any of these events that's ever happened, but objection.
Salestein, do you want to respond to the objection?
I guess if necessary, I can call Mr. Haas and get direct testimony from him, and if it's controverted, then I'll call Miss Ford as a rebuttal witness.
All right, that's fine.
That's fine.
Sustained then. Go ahead.
All right, Miss Ford, specifically, when you were on the phone, were you able to hear Miss Bradley?
Yes.
What did Miss Bradley? What were you able to hear Miss Bradley say?
I was able to hear her say multiple things, but generally she was denying that she was unsupervised with the children. She was indicating that we were trying to steal her children. She was escalated, saying to get off of her property and various things of that nature. She did not really speak calmly or coherently, so there wasn't really a lot of sense to the situation.
Okay. And were you able to hear Miss Butler?
Yes.
Did Mrs. Butler say anything?
She did. The majority of Miss Butler's statements just consisted of calling me a monster, telling me that she hopes I can't sleep at night and things of that nature. She didn't really provide an explanation for what was occurring in the home.
Okay. And so were you able, after those interactions, were you able to address care of Abra?
I was. During that conversation I previously referenced with Mr. Haas, after he was done kind of speaking to me about his concerns, he indicated that he was going to leave work, return to the home, and take Abra, one of their approved babysitters.
Okay. Did you have any further interaction with the family on the 13th of May, 2023?
Not on the 13th, no.
Okay. You mentioned previously in your testimony that you had contact with the family on the May 14th, 2023. Is that correct?
Correct.
What was your nature of your contact with the family on that day?
I received a call from Mr. Haas on the morning of the 14th, and he indicated that Miss Bradley had assaulted him and law enforcement was present at the home.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ford. I have no further questions for now.
Thank you.
Mr. Schropp, any questions?
No questions.
Ms. Barco, any questions?
No.
Mr. Rosenthal, any questions?
Yes. So good afternoon, Ms. Ford. So Ms. Ford, do you guys have CPS or anything wearing body cameras? There's a lot of phone interaction, but do you guys have body cams or anything of that nature that would capture some of the stuff you said today?
No, we do not.
You don't. So no body cams. And then how clear were you able to hear through the phone of other people not talking into the phone? Was it very clear? I mean, how did that work?
During times of the conversation, Miss Aslorp was holding the phone up so that Miss Butler and Miss Bradley could speak to me directly, because I am associated with the case, so they wanted to speak with me. So I could hear very clearly during those times. As I testified previously, sometimes it was very chaotic and hard to hear.
So I mean, pretty much she's holding up the phone trying to de-escalate the situation so you can hear. That's protocol. That's how it works.
They had asked to speak with me, so yes.
Okay. And were you argumentative, or have you ever been argumentative with Elizabeth, Miss Butler?
I do not believe so.
No. And out of, the times that the police department's been called within the last month, was there any tickets, anything else arising out of it? It doesn't seem you guys had to get really involved with 14th.
Not that I'm aware of. We were called by both law enforcement and Mr. Haas on the 14th, but law enforcement was able to find resolution. As far as I'm aware, that investigation is still open though.
Okay. And then after, speaking with Mr. Haas, I mean, you're talking to him in the heat of the moment. Have you ever had a conversation without an incident with Mr. Haas, or has it always just been when incident starts and arises?
I have had conversations with him previously, but not since the 14th, no.
And have you been to the home? Have you been to their home?
I have, yes.
And then, so during these conversations, you tend to get them in a moment where obviously they're argumentative. That happens a lot in your field. Does it make sense a day, before, when she's worried about kids' safety and what's going to happen and children, when they're saying that she wasn't supervised, when her mom, maybe not in the bathroom, but on the premises, from my understanding, from no testimony that I've heard, she, was physically away from the residence, maybe not in the bathroom. But other than that, have you ever heard of the kids being unsupervised by Miss Bradley? Not Miss Bradley, I'm sorry, Miss Butler. Up until then, she was supervising. She was a good supervisor up until then, correct?
I cannot speak to her abilities as a supervisor, but we were getting text message reports that she was supervising the children. We had not checked on that in person up until the 13th.
And then is it normal protocol if a person's not, if you go to the door and the person may be outside, is it normal protocol to all of a sudden, I guess, start having the department services come in and replace the grandmother, the person that has been appointed by the court previous? Is that protocol to get rid of them as a supervisor and have the department come in? If it is, they were just outside. Is that how that works? Is that standard?
It's protocol if the family is violating the visitation plans. And I'm not sure if you misunderstood the testimony, but she was not on the premises. She reported being at a different home in the same trailer park complex, but she was not on the residence or at the residence. So
Right.
yes, it is protocol if she's violating the safety plan.
From your guys' testimony, correct? That is correct. I mean, but she was in eyes view of the home. I mean, she wasn't far, was she?
Can't speak to if she could see the home. No, she was not far per if she was at the residence, she said, but the visitation plan states that she will be supervised, eyes on Elizabeth and the children at all times.
Okay. And so I guess when this inconsistency happened, I mean, she wasn't far away, but Elizabeth, do you guys expect Elizabeth to stop watching the children and make sure the mom is like right near her? Is that the expectation?
The expectation is that Miss Butler follow the plan and that Miss Bradley contact us if she does not have a supervisor, and she has been informed of that previously.
So how far is too far away from the home to say that you're not supervising? Like if you're outside looking for a sippy cup and you're not inside the home, is that enough?
They are supposed to be in the same room when they are supervising parenting time.
Or if they're outside, they just got to be in close proximity.
Correct. Eyes on them.
And then, so when she asked the vehicle to move, what did you instruct the CPS worker to do after she asked the vehicle to move on the property?
I instructed Miss Aslorp to stay close to the home until we could ensure that the parenting time was ended, Maverick was safe back in our care, and that we could contact Mr. Haas.
And then who called the police department?
Miss Aslorp did.
And how come nothing arose out of CPS calling the police and nothing was issued at all? Just this incident, and now we're trying to get her out the home because you guys came. And can you explain that to me?
We will frequently contact law enforcement for assistance if we feel that there's a safety concern. That doesn't mean there will be a citation or anything of that nature. It's really for the safety of both the children and the department workers. But that is not the only reason we're requesting removal of the home. We have concerns regarding the domestic violence altercations and the domestic discord. Miss Bradley was allowed to remain in the home because Mr. Haas was a safety factor, and we no longer feel that he is a safety factor based on these domestic incidents.
But she left the home and went to her mom's. Domestic incidents, so she's not allowed to raise her voice or argue or nothing like that. She can't even raise her voice.
It was.
And you guys are going to put it against her as if she's got a domestic violent crime against her.
It was reported to me that Miss Bradley was engaging in a physical altercation with her partner while her child was in the same home.
Then how come not arrest her? How come she didn't get arrested?
You'll have to ask law enforcement that question.
Right. So I guess, what is your goal for Miss Bradley, Maverick, for this family? What's your goal? What is CPS's goal? What are you guys trying to get to?
My goal is to keep Maverick and Abra safe.
Maverick and Abra, and the best interests of them as well, right?
Correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Any other questions for Ms. Ford? No. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Mr. Salasine, anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. For my next witness, I'd like to call Mr. Haas. And Mr. Haas, did you have telephone contact with Miss Erica Ford on or about May 13th of 2023?
I did.
What did you tell her during that telephone contact?
I told her that I was upset that the child was not being supervised.
Okay. What did you do as a result of learning that the child was not supervised?
I left my employment and I went home and I took care of my child.
Okay. And what did you do to take care of your child?
I found a babysitter so I could go back to work.
Okay. Why were you surprised that the child wasn't being supervised?
Because it was a Saturday and they're always with grandma on Saturdays when I'm at work.
Okay. Mr. Hawes, did you have any further contact with Miss Ford on or about May 14th of 2023?
She was one of the phone calls that I made that morning.
Okay. What were the other phone calls that you made that morning?
Just 911.
And why did you
And
call
my boss.
Why did you call 911 on the morning of May 14th, 2023?
I didn't have time to argue about where the child was going. I was late for work already, and it was just getting more escalated than I could deal with at the time. So I just wanted somebody to tell me that I could take my child and put her in the babysitter so I could go to work without being in an argument.
Who were you arguing with?
Elizabeth.
And who was getting escalated?
It was Mother's Day.
And who was getting
It was
escalated?
Because I have to find a babysitter so I can go to work. And it was Mother's Day. Like, imagine telling the mother of your child that you can't keep your kid on Mother's Day.
Okay. And what happened when you told Miss Bradley you needed to find a babysitter?
I think she did what any other mother would have done. She lost her mind.
And what happened when Miss Bradley lost her mind?
I exited the house and I called the police.
Okay. Now,
And then she proceeded to her mother's house, which is about 50 yards away from our house.
and what did you tell the 911 operator was occurring?
Objection, asked and answered. I mean, I don't know how many times we can ask the same question over and over again. He said he wanted to go to work. That's why he called, because you guys placed an order that they need to supervise and he wants to follow the order. That's, I think, what he's explained.
I don't know that he specifically answered the question. I don't think it's asked and answered.
I think
I
it
would
is.
agree.
That's
I would
fine.
agree, overruled. Go ahead and answer the question.
I forgot it already.
Re-ask the question, Mr. Salesian.
What did you tell not the 911 dispatcher was happening?
I told them that I was trying to go to work and she left the house with the baby. And she
Okay.
threw some things at me.
When you told them that she threw some things at you, was that true?
Yes. But was I hit by anything? No.
What did Miss Bradley
I
throw
wasn't
at
assaulted.
Mr. Hawes? What did Miss Bradley throw at you?
I don't know. Pack of diaper wipes, probably.
You mentioned you also called Miss Ford that morning. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why did you call Miss Ford?
Objection, asked and answered. We talked about Miss Ford and we went to the officer. Now we're back to Miss Ford.
Stay.
Okay. What did you tell Miss Ford when you called her that morning?
Objection, asked and answered. Did the judge overrule or sustain?
I sustained the previous objection, and I think you already testified to that too, Mr. Salesian.
Okay. Was the information that you told Miss Ford accurate that morning?
Yes.
What's the current status of your relationship with Miss Bradley?
We are together trying to make our family work. And I don't think any of this is helping. If anything, it makes it worse.
Have you
They
ever
don't even
asked?
give her a chance.
Have you ever asked for Miss Bradley to be removed from your home?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes. Yes, I have. In the heat of the moment, when I was very upset and I thought that CPS was on my side.
Just a second. There's an objection. Mr. Rosenthal?
Never mind, Your Honor.
All right,
Scratch
go
that
ahead.
from the record.
So I assumed that they were trying to help me. And now I see they're just trying to hurt me. When I was told that I could ask for help, I asked for help, and now they're using that against me because I fell behind on some bills. And now I got caught back up. I have a working home. I'm trying to put my family back together.
Okay, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Rosenthal, any questions for Mr. Haas?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. I know this is hard, Mr. Haas. I know this is hard for all of you, especially Miss Bradley. Has CPS ever told you to call if anything occurs, any argument, anything whatsoever?
Yes.
Have anybody, Miss Smose or Miss Ford directly have told you that?
Yes.
When you've had contact, with CPS, do they usually come and de-escalate the situation? Do they use, certain protocols that would seem like trying to not make it worse, rather make it better, repair?
Normally, any communication with CPS, there is no issue.
And
It's usually they just come into the house, check to see if everything's okay, and then they leave.
And I know this has been a detriment. Has it been a detriment? Obviously you're working and babysitter. How much do you guys spend on babysitters because of this?
At least $20 an hour.
And then how much do you make an hour, sir?
I make $17 an hour.
And everything, that bill that wasn't paid, you were telling them in good faith. You didn't think that was going to be used against you one bill.
Yeah, I was hoping that they would help me get back on track.
Because that's what you thought CPS was there to do.
Yes.
And the whole time, what was in your mind CPS's goal, this court's goal? What has been their goal?
Reunification.
Not what they're doing. Reunification.
To exit our lives, to close this case and get on with it. So we
Has-
can either prove everybody wrong or prove everybody right.
Has this case stopped you guys from being able to move forward with each other, with your daughter, with your family?
Absolutely.
And have the services
85% of the time.
have the services that's been provided by CPS, by the recommendation of the court, has that been more detrimental to you or more beneficial?
I haven't seen any services lately.
And usually after CPS comes, so after the 13th, was Elizabeth, worried, scared, upset, mad?
I think all of them.
And do you think it's reasonable to say that trickled over onto the 14th, that she, pretty much was triggered on the 13th and then the 14th?
Absolutely. She was led to believe that I called CPS on Saturday to have her checked up on. And she still believed that the next morning. And then I was trying to leave with her kid. She, like I said before, she lost her mind. It was
Mother's
any
Day.
other mother would have reacted.
But she did. She ended up leaving and going to her mom's, correct? And I believe
Yes.
during that time, her mom was still she was still the supervised person by the court. That didn't go into effect till last week. So that would have been proper.
Yes.
And has the mom and Miss Butler, has she been able to assist, a lot in helping help you guys provide for the family during the circumstances?
She has done a lot for us.
And she lives how far away from you?
Half a football field.
And if you were, ideally, what would you want out of this situation? Ideally, what would you want to see at the end of this situation, at the end of these hearings? What is your expectation?
I would like to see the children home and us just left alone.
And when you see
normal lives,
when you see Abra and Maverick together, do they have a brother and sister relationship? Do they know one another?
They do.
Does Maverick ever refer to you as father?
He calls me Dada.
Do you love Maverick?
I do.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Schwab, any questions?
No questions.
Ms. Barco, any questions?
No.
Sir, if the court were to lean toward a goal of guardianship, would you be willing to be the guardian for Maverick?
Absolutely.
After that question, any other questions for Mr. Haas?
Not for me, Your
All right,
Honor.
hearing nothing, we'll move on. Mr. Salasina, anything else?
I have no additional evidence for today's purposes.
Mr. Rosenthal, did you have any evidence you want to present?
I have no additional evidence outside what was provided to me, Your Honor. No.
Mr. Schwab? No. Ms. Marco, do you have a report on the children?
Yes, Your Honor. So I reached out to the department to see if they were going to be supervising any visits with the kids between Miss Bradley. It was reported to me that she hadn't reached out. I did try to call Mr. Haas. I didn't get a response. I did make contact with Maverick and his caretaker. As the court is well aware, as is Miss Bradley, he's in the same placement that he was when he was first removed at the beginning of the case. He does very well in that home. I talked to the current caregiver about how she thought the visits were going before they were made supervised by the department. So the visitation schedule, according to the caregiver, since approximately January has been Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, with Miss Bradley from approximately 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. with her mother or Mr. Haas supervising. I think the caregiver maybe had some concerns that they weren't really being supervised, but she also didn't mention any concerns about Maverick when he was returned to the home after those visits. So he's well acclimated to the home that he's in now. He does, according to the caregiver, refer to Miss Bradley and Mr. Haas as mom and dad, though he does call the foster dad as well. But again, he's been placed with them for a significant amount of his life. So, that's understandable. At this point, he's not receiving any services. If he stays with the current caregiver, eventually maybe some CMH services, as well as getting him involved in a play group, because he stays home during the day with the caregiver. He's not really involved with anybody his own age in the home. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Salasina, any final comments?
Your Honor, this case has been going on since 2021. With respect to Maverick is set for a permanency planning hearing. The department's concerned with respect to Maverick about a continued goal of reunification. Honestly, with respect to Brian Kalk, it seems like he has not engaged in any services to date, really hasn't been involved in Maverick's life for an extended period of time. With respect to Ms. Bradley, Ms. Bradley has been having extensive pairing times with Maverick. Her willingness or ability to address the issues that led Maverick into foster care, it seems like we haven't made much progress toward alleviating those goals in almost 2 years. Your Honor, at this point, I think the court should consider a change in permanency planning goal to adoption. I know that there have been, suggestions that perhaps guardianship would be an appropriate goal for Maverick, with Mr. Haas serving as the guardian. That gives the department pause. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Haas previously stated on the record that he was not interested in providing guardianship for Maverick. And further, with Mr. Haas's testimony today, it sounds like the relationship between him and Ms. Bradley is contentious. And this occurred recently. I feel like Mr. Haas has enough struggle trying to manage the relationship with Ms. Bradley and care for Abra. Adding an additional child to the equation that he would be ultimately responsible for, to me, seems like a recipe for disaster. If the court is inclined to move toward a guardianship with Mr. Haas, with him being the juvenile guardian for Maverick, my suggestion would be that the court would move at a glacial pace, because I think that would be necessary to ensure Maverick's safety in that home. With respect to Abra, this was set for a progress review hearing today. And, again, with respect to Ms. Bradley, it seems like the progress toward reunifying with Ms. Bradley has been limited at best. However, unlike Maverick, Abra has an appropriate father who appears ready, willing, and able to fulfill that role. He isn't a respondent in this case. And we believe that if Ms. Bradley were to be ordered out of the home, Abra would be able to be safely placed with Mr. Haas, and if he were to obtain full legal and physical custody of Abra through a child custody case with respect to Abra could be dismissed. Your Honor, we would just encourage the court to carefully consider this case in the totality, as well as the evidence that was presented here today, before making a determination as to how to proceed with these cases.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Well, Your Honor, to pick up where Mr. Salsina left off, if Mr. Haas is an appropriate parent and able to take care of this little baby, I think he's probably equally capable and appropriate to take care of Maverick. He already has a close relationship. He's pretty much, the child is pretty much grown up with him off and on. And I think during these last couple incidences, most of it does fall on Miss Bradley, it sounds like. Mr. Haas' response, rather than getting drunk or hitting her or doing anything, he called CPS, he reported it, and he called the police. So I think he's been a very appropriate and a very tough situation he was put in. So I would urge the court to accept the guardianship for Maverick as well. I think it's the most important spot for Maverick, his family, pretty close to it, a stepdad. He's already got the relationship. And by Mr. Salasinas and the department's own admissions, he is an appropriate parent for Abra. He's equally appropriate for Maverick.
Mr. Rosenthal.
And I would follow that. I mean, we don't want to frustrate this family anymore. We want them to work together. And yes, are there concerns? But Miss Bradley has made leaps and bounds, even if that's not acknowledged. You know, with me, she has, you know, only expressed, you know, family unity and wanting her daughter and son to be together with the person she wants to be married to. If the court sees it deemed fit that Abra, if you know, Mr. Haas is a fit parent for Abra, I don't see why he wouldn't be a fit parent for Maverick. And I don't see how having Elizabeth leave the home will help this family. You know, Mr. Haas has said numerous amounts of times that she not only helps the grandmother's there to help as well. He's providing for the family. Elizabeth has had jobs. That's been interfered with. They've been in good faith telling CPS and telling the department what to do, and it's only hurt them. It's only hurt them. They don't want to be hurt no more. I understand that, you know, CPS, that, you know, there's goals related to these children, but however, I want brother and sister, Abra and Maverick, to be together. And if we have Mr. Haas willing to accept that role and Miss Bradley working as she is towards being the mother that she knows she is, I think that's more than acceptable. And I think with the help of Miss Butler, I think that this could be an amazing circumstance for everybody. And I think we could look back at it and be happy that this decision was made. I know it's been difficult and I know it's been a tough road, but I don't see anything better than, instead of splitting up the whole family, better for the best interest of the children than reuniting the family and having a fit parent, what the court already wants them to do with Abra, having that reunification and having the guardianship given to Mr. Haas. I mean, if he's fit for Abra, he's fit for Maverick, and he wants them in their lives. And Maverick, from my understanding, anytime I've spoke with Mr. Haas, anytime I've spoke with Miss Bradley, Maverick has become his son, and that does happen. It doesn't have, there's no birthrights to being a father sometimes, and there doesn't have to be. And Mr. Haas has shown that. And that's all I have to say. I commend him. I commend this family. And honestly, they've only been outstanding to work with since I got in the case the day before the hearing in March. I want to keep working with them. And I do agree with opposing counsel that, you know, that we need to take steps at this, but we want to take steps because we know this is the right step.
All right, Ms. Marco.
Your Honor, I'm kind of split with this, so obviously I will defer to you ultimately. I hear what both sides are really saying in this. You know, especially as far as Mr. Haas, he has been a trooper throughout this case. He has put up with a lot more, I think, than a lot of other people would, as far as following safety plans, you know, working with the department, all those things. He's really done a good job. I don't think Miss Bradley has necessarily acted in good faith with her interaction with the department whatsoever. However, I have seen her with her kids, and I've said this many times on the record. She is very appropriate when she's with her children's. Well, what I've seen, it's the decisions she makes either when she's mad or using drugs that really, you know, take away from that. I think keeping siblings together is generally always in their best interest, especially at their young age. If you have a fit and willing fictive father that's willing to take on guardianship, I don't really think the court or DHS should deny that at this point. I don't know. This is a tough case. I don't think it benefits the family to really keep working reunification services. They haven't really gotten anywhere. So I don't know.
All right, well, I got a lot of notes here, a lot to think about. I don't have time to put it all down right now verbally on the record without having time to go over all this. So I'll take some time over the next day or two and issue a written recommendation in order. Until that time, the current orders are remain in effect. All right. And this is a date and time set for review in this matter. Mr. Salasina is here on behalf of the department. Mr. Schropp is here on behalf of Victoria, who it looks like is now present. We're doing the matter via Zoom and live in person. Any objection?
No objection.
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Salasina, how do you want to begin?
If I could, Your Honor, I'd like to call Mr. Charles Phelps. And where is Victoria currently placed?
She's currently independent living. She lives with her supportive adult in Flint.
And is that, are there any concerns with that independent living placement?
Not at this time. She's living there temporarily until she can get into her own apartment. And I have not noted or seen any concerns at this time.
What efforts are being made to find Victoria her own independent housing?
We're getting her some mission vouchers. I'm still in the process of helping her get those, but I do plan on assisting her in getting those vouchers so she can put them towards security deposit and rent.
And is Victoria currently participating in any extracurricular enrichment activities through her placement that would qualify and meet the reasonable prudent parenting standard?
She is not participating in any services.
Okay. Is Victoria currently in school?
She is not.
Is she engaged in any sort of adult education program?
No.
Is she working to complete a GED or diploma alternative?
She is not.
Okay. Is Victoria currently employed?
She is employed full-time at the Family Puppy in Flint.
Okay. And what does she do for the Family Puppy?
If I recall, she is a sales associate there.
Okay. And is Victoria have any physical or mental health concerns at all during this past reporting period?
No.
Okay. Is she participating in MYOI?
Not at this time. We are encouraging her to, but she has decided against it at this time.
And what's Victoria's current pregnancy planning goal?
I'm sorry?
What's Victoria's current pregnancy planning goal?
Independent living.
And what progress has been made toward that pregnancy planning goal during the past reporting period?
She moved out of Holy Cross living and she moved in with a supportive adult in Flint. She is employed full-time. She's seems to be doing well there. She's paying her bills and she has been cooperating with me as far as meeting goes and keeping me updated. So she's doing well as far as, meeting her needs.
How frequently are you meeting with Victoria?
Monthly.
And do you have any recommendations for this case going forward?
I would just recommend that we continue with the goal of independent living. She seems to be doing well, and I think with just a little bit of support, she should be able to live independently.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Phelps. I have no further questions.
Mr. Schropp, any questions?
But it sounds like she is living pretty independently, is she not, right now?
She is living pretty independently. She lives with a supportive adult who does help transport her.
And I just want to make sure because I might try and overdrive.
I'm sorry, I think you got cut off.
We did. I don't know where that came from, but go ahead. Other than the living arrangement, and she is living quite independently now.
Yes,
Correct?
I would say so.
I did note in the report back on in April 30th that she had found an apartment, Sugar Tree Apartments, and they were going to provide first and last month's. Did that apartment fall through then?
So the plans have changed. I'm not going to do the apartments because with all the process of going into the apartments, they want you to do so many standards. And I'm like, okay, then I will just save up and then I'll just do, eventually after I get everything figured out, I will do rent to own.
Mr. Phelps, are there any other services you can offer her?
I'm sure there are. I would have to look into some resources. I'm new to the county. I just moved here, so I'm still learning about all the resources in Saginaw and Flint. But I can look into what resources as far as helping her in regards to rent to own. But we do plan on
Let me
helping
put it
her.
this way, Mr. Phelps. Is there any service that is provided as a result of her being a continuing ward that she wouldn't otherwise have?
Oh,
She's 18 now.
Right. We do have YVAC, which she is eligible to enroll in. I just don't believe she. If I remember,
You have to be
correctly,
19 to do YVAC.
Oh, that is correct. You do have to be 19, not 18. I apologize. So MYOY is the only other thing that I'm aware of at this point.
All right, and she's not interested in participating at this point, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. All right, thank you. I have nothing further on.
Mr. Salesina, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Schropp, anything else?
No.
Mr. Salesina, any final comments?
Just so you adopt the recommendations outlined by Mr. Phelps, I would like, I think the department would like to see the case remain open at least for a short period of time to at least provide some rental assistance if appropriate for Victoria. That would help to kind of help her transition from foster care into a fully independent living situation.
Mr. Schropp?
I have nothing further to add as far as evidence, Your Honor. As far as closing, I guess if there's anything out there, obviously the department is not very intrusive and really impeding her living because she's living pretty independently now. On the other hand, I'm not sure anything is open. If there's any service or any finances available because of her continued status as a ward, I would urge the court to keep the case open. I guess I just don't see what that is at this point. I did speak with her a few weeks ago. At that time, she was doing well and still at Corcoran and enjoying school. Things have clearly changed since then, and now they've changed again with her rent-to-own plan. But I guess I don't have an objection to the court continuing the jurisdiction at this point. I'm not sure there's a lot left, but if there's anything out there, it's not an intrusion on her life to continue.
All right, I guess, Victoria, what do you think? Do you want the department to still be involved and help support you, or do you feel you can do it on your own?
To stay in the department, what do you mean by it would still help me?
Well, when you're under the jurisdiction of the court, the Department of Health and Human Services or an outside agency, but in this case, the department is charged with helping you, with supporting you and providing services that are determined to be in your best interest. At this point, that appears to be mainly, I guess, housing services, kind of getting you on the right track as far as that's concerned.
On my own.
Do you still need that assistance, or can you feel like you're ready to do it on your own, or what? I mean, you're 18, so I don't want to burden your life if that's what you see it as.
If I may, I think I don't know if she's receiving an independent living stipend, but I would hate to see that discontinue if this case closes. Do you know, Mr. Trop, is she getting that?
I don't know. I'm not aware of anything. She
is getting a stipend.
Oh, there. Okay. Well, that's certainly worth continuing jurisdiction then.
Well, with that, since I can't hear, I'll accept the report and recommendations. Victoria Benton remain awarded to the court, at least for one more reporting period, which is 6 months in this case. So the permanency planning goal appears to be appropriate. The department will continue to help support her with her needs as far as living expenses, living accommodations and things of that nature, and other services that may be necessary to help support her, although she is an adult. The matter will be reviewed on November 22nd at 2 p.m. There being nothing further, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Honor.
And the Lloyds are no longer the foster parents on this case, so I don't know if they need to be in this.
What's that?
The Lloyds are no longer the foster parents of the children.
Oh,
So I don't know if they need to be in the Zoom. They can watch on YouTube.
all right.
We were told by the court we were allowed to be in this meeting 2 weeks ago.
So you are or were the foster parents?
We were the previous foster parents.
Okay. So, excuse me. Wow. All right. Well, there's no harm in letting them say. Who do I have on the Nitro 8 there? Is that someone involved in this case?
I don't think so.
I don't either. All right. Let's see.
Okay. And when did you become involved with the Golden, Fowler, Akins minors?
Oh, when did I become involved? I don't have the exact date off the top of my head. When the adoption agency received the adoption case is when, because I was already working here.
Okay. And what is the current permanency planning goal?
Adoption.
And what progress has been made toward that permanency planning goal during the past reporting period?
So during the past reporting period, assessments have been done on all, well, I'm sorry, I'll take that back. They have not been completed, but they are in progress on all competing parties. As of right now, we have 3 competing parties on this case.
Who are the competing parties?
The Lloyds, Darcy Godin, which is the maternal grandmother, and Alanis Godin, which is the girls' aunt, maternal aunt.
Okay. And what are the current permanency planning goal what are the current barriers toward the permanency planning goal of adoption?
Current barriers are to complete all assessments, to make a recommendation, provide all the assessments and necessary documents to MCI for their decision in the matter.
Okay. How soon do you believe that can be completed?
I'm hopeful with by by July, I am hopeful to have everything submitted. There has been some hiccups with obtaining some reports from the Michigan State Police, but we are working on that. And yeah, so once all the assessments are completed, approved, and we receive all the necessary documents, then we will submit to MCI.
Do you have a projected adoption date at this point?
No, I do not. With competing parties, they're taking a good 6 to 9 months from the date that all documentation and reports are submitted to MCI.
All right. Do you have any recommendations for this case going forward, Ms. Taylor?
At this time, I do not have any recommendations other than the girls to remain with the goal of adoption.
Okay. I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Barker, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Just to clarify, isn't it true that Mr. and Mrs. Lloyd only are interested in adopting Aaliyah and Kylie?
That is correct. That is true.
Okay. And isn't it also true that the new foster family has relayed interest in adopting the girls?
Not to me. I did reach out to the new foster family, and they were not willing to work with me at that time, which was last week, because they were under impression or direction from Nuevo DHS that the adoption case was being transferred other than CFS of Northeast Michigan.
Okay, and then just one last question. There are currently MCI directives in place that basically are ordering the girls to stay together unless foster care cannot find a home to take them all, correct? Hence why they were moved?
Yes, that's correct. MCI wants all the children, all 3 girls, to remain together in one foster placement.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Salasina, any other evidence you want to present?
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Ms. Deborah Pearson. Okay. And during the past reporting period, where have the Golden Fowler Aikens children been placed?
They've been placed with Mrs. and Mr. Weeks.
Okay. When did that placement occur?
On the 12th of May, 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks ago.
So that's a relatively recent placement change.
Correct.
Why did that placement change occur?
It's my understanding that the previous placement only wanted to adopt the younger 2, and MCI would not approve a sibling split. So they were moved to a new placement to complete the permanency goal.
Okay. And at this point in time, are there any concerns with the girls' current placement?
I have not been able to meet with them. I do plan on going up there to on Friday to meet with them all in person to see how everything's going. I did speak with Tara last week, and she said that the girls were acclimating, starting school, but there weren't any other reports of concerning behaviors.
Okay. With respect to Adriana, have there been any physical or mental health concerns for her during the past reporting period?
Unfortunately, the only information I have is just from the past few weeks. I do know that there is concern for Adriana with regard to self-harm. We did do a safety plan during our first FTM that the caregivers will contact CMH crisis hotline in order to address that. And it's my understanding that Adriana, well, that's not a mental health issue.
Okay. Are there any physical health issues for Adriana?
Not to my knowledge, not to my understanding.
Have there been any educational concerns for Adriana during the past reporting period?
So I know that there has been some discussion about an IEP. She doesn't have an IEP right now. Her grades are average to above average. So that's something that I'll be monitoring.
Okay. Is Adriana receiving any services during the past reporting period?
I'm sure she has, but I've only offered case management and then an early on referral for the youngest. I apologize.
Okay. And have there been any physical or mental health concerns for a last reporting period?
I do know that she is seeing a counselor, but to my understanding, I am not aware of any other mental health situations.
Any educational concerns for Leah?
Not at this time. I have been told that she does very well in school. She's in the 3rd grade and she does not, there's no need for an IEP at this time.
Has she received any services during the past reporting period?
Just case management from this worker.
Okay. Have there been any physical or mental health concerns for Kylie during the past reporting period?
She participates in early on services, but no, other than that, no.
Have there been any educational concerns for Kylie?
Nope, she's not of age to go to school yet.
Have there been any services offered to Kylie during the past reporting period?
Case management.
Okay.
By this worker.
All right. With respect to all three children, are they receiving extracurricular or enrichment activities that would meet the reasonable prudent parenting standard?
It's my understanding that Mrs. and Mr. Weeks did have an event planned for the weekend that the girls came. And unfortunately, I can't remember exactly what that was. But I have not been working with them enough or long enough, and I don't think they've been in care long enough to be able to determine that, at least from my perspective.
All right. And all three girls are currently placed together?
Correct.
All right. The permanency planning goal is currently adoption. Would you like to see that permanency planning goal continue?
Yes.
Why?
Because keeping all the girls together in this placement. Okay, so it was my understanding that this was a pre-adoptive home, and this home will provide permanency or is able to provide permanency for all three girls in their home and not have to split them up.
Why do you believe that this is a pre-adoptive home?
That was my impression when we had the FTM.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations for this case going forward?
That the minor children remain MCI wards, placed with DHS for care, placement, and supervision. The permanency goal remain adoption, and this case be reviewed pursuant to case roll.
Okay. So at this point, when did this case come onto your caseload?
I think I was made aware of it. But unfortunately, I can't give you a specific date, but I believe it was the second week of May.
Okay, so this case is relatively new to you.
Very new, yes.
All right. So you haven't even had an opportunity to meet with the girls face to face.
Correct. There is a courtesy worker, and I believe she might be on, but she is doing the visits for me, but I feel like I need to go up there and try to build some rapport.
Who's the courtesy worker?
Misty Huggard.
Okay. And where is she from?
She is Antrim DHS.
Okay.
Antrim DHS.
And all right. So are you going to be taking over this case from now on, Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Barco, any questions?
No.
Mr. Salasine, any other evidence?
I have none for today's purposes, Your Honor.
Ms. Barco, any evidence?
No.
All right. Don't do this very often, but it's been brought to my attention that the previous foster care placement has appeared today at their wish. Reviewing the court rule, Michigan Court Rule 3.976D, which is under permanency planning hearings. One, the procedure, it states that each permanency planning hearing must be conducted by a judge or a referee. Paper reviews, ex parte hearings, stipulated orders, or other actions that are not open to the participation of A, the parents of the child, comma, unless parental rights have been terminated, B, the child, if of appropriate age, and C, foster parents or pre-adoptive parents, if any, are not permanency planning hearings. It goes on under number 2 to state that evidence is the Michigan rules of evidence do not apply other than those with respect to privileges, except to the extent such privileges are abrogated by MCL 722.631. At the permanency planning hearing, all relevant and material evidence, including oral and written reports, may be received by the court and may be relied upon to the extent of its probative value. The court must consider any written or oral information concerning the child from the child's parent, guardian, custodian, foster parent, child caring institution, or relative with whom the child is placed, in addition to any other evidence offered at the hearing. It goes on, but that was the relevant portion for today's proceedings. So there's a person on here named James Weeks Godin, says current foster dad. Asserted you're the current foster care placement for all three children?
Correct.
Oh, did you have anything you wanted to add to today's proceedings?
No, I don't have anything more to add. I just
All right.
trying to get caught up.
Yep, and Mr. and Mrs. Lloyd are here, and I think they wanted to say something. They're the previous foster parents, it's my understanding. and are interested or are one of the three competing parties to adopt some or all of the children. Folks, what did you want to say?
I do have a statement in regards to Adriana. Our decision to not move forward to adopting Adriana was one of the hardest decisions that we've ever had to make, knowing that our decision affects her life. The girls came to our home, and when they came, I told them they can make, this is a new chapter in their life. You can write anything you want in your chapter. What came out of Adriana's mouth was, I want to be adopted, but her actions told me that she wanted to fix her relationship with her aunt and go back to her aunt, who had previously requested her be removed from her home, along with her two other sisters. Unfortunately, our relationship with the GAL has been a very strained relationship. Not once has she seen Kylie when she was in our home, which is very disturbing. We have always allowed and interacted with the GALs, and even phone calls that I made early on when we missed the very first interaction with the GAL and the girls. It was, I believe it was the Monday after they came to us, a couple of days after. By the time we realized we missed it, we got on the Zoom. She wasn't there. She didn't answer her phone. One of the disturbing things that I was told about from Adriana was she did come up. She did see Adriana and Aaliyah at school. And there were ongoing phone conversations weekly after the November family team meeting, where this whole case kind of started spinning out of control. One of the things that Adriana told me was that she was not supposed to tell us that these conversations were happening, which is between her and her GAL. But it seems odd that someone's going behind the guardian's back to talk to the children. And she was very emphatic about not letting us get her phone number. I had her office number, obviously. And she also told Adriana that it was her choice. And Adriana is a very traumatized 13-year-old girl, and she was told to make a very adult decision, whether to go back to her aunts, to stay with us, or to move to a new foster home. And I think that's very unfair for an adult to make a 13-year-old traumatized girl make a decision that is going to affect not only her life, but also her sister's lives. And the communication has been horrible between us as the foster parent and the GAL. And I've gotten the same stories from Child and Family Services that the communication has been spotty. It's not been good. And talking to the administration of Child and Family Services, they're extremely frustrated as well. So it's not that we don't love the girls, but we want to see the best for Adriana. And unfortunately, the best is something that we can't give her. And that's the reason why we can only move forward with adoption for Aaliyah and Kylie. So.
All right, thank you. Considering that, plus the evidence presented in this matter, I would find that the children would remain wards of the court under the care, placement, and supervision of the Department and Child and Family Services. The permanency planning goal is adoption. That appears to be appropriate. And there is some progress being made toward that goal. That'll take a while to sort out, though. The children do have access to services and experiences that qualify under the reasonable, prudent parenting standard. Their placement at this point appears to be appropriate, and the matter will be reviewed further on August 16th, 2023 at 3 p.m. Until further hearing, we're adjourned. Thank you. Who do I have here from the Department of Corrections?
Thank you, Your Honor.
R. Justin Crozier. Oh, I'm not from the Department of Corrections.
No, who do I have in the Department of Corrections?
Dorian McCormick.
Oh, okay. Yeah.